West Ham squad from humiliating European exit shows how far Moyes' team has come. As West Ham United prepare to take on Eintracht Frankfurt in the semi-finals of the Europa League, their last campaign in the competition feels a world away. Back then, Slaven Bilic's Hammers were coming off the high of their 7th-place finish in the final season at Upton Park, but still coming to terms with their future at a new, and not universally liked, home ground. The first game at the London Stadium had seen them overturn a first-leg deficit to overcome Slovenia's NK Domžale, but the next round brought a familiar foe. The wounds hadn't yet scabbed over after Astra Giurgiu eliminated an understrength West Ham in the August 2015 playoff, but a draw in Romania inspired confidence. An intensely frustrating 90 minutes changed all that, though, and began the downward spiral which would eventually see Bilic lose his job in 2017 off the back of 15 difficult months. More than 5 years on, it's not just in the dugout where things have changed. Just 3 of the matchday 18 from that balmy August evening are still at the club, and you just need one look back at the lineup from that night to see how far the club has come. West Ham weren't quite at full strength for the game. Aaron Cresswell, Dimitri Payet and Andy Carroll were among the injured players, while Mark Noble was rested after scoring in the first leg. Adrian was also left on the bench, with Darren Randolph continuing in goal, and the Irishman was unable to keep out Philip Teixeira's opener for the visitors. It was one of just 2 shots on target for the away side, but ultimately it ended up being enough. Michel Antonio had started the season at right back, but after conceding a penalty against Chelsea he was pushed further forward by the time the playoff took place. The full-back spots were instead occupied by Sam Byram on the right and academy product Reece Burke on the left, very much a central defender slotting into an unfamiliar position. The center of defense featured the more familiar pairing of Winston Reid and Angelo Ogbonna, partners at the back for much of the previous season, and the experienced heads were able to mostly keep their opponents quiet. The problems, however, lay further forward. Will West Ham win the Europa League? Have your say in the comments section. Bilic's team had made an array of signings after qualifying for Europe, but one of these, record by Andre Ayew, was already on the treatment table after suffering a thigh injury on his debut against Chelsea. His absence meant there was a start for another new arrival, Gökhan Töre, who said Bilic was like a father to the players after following the Croatian to London from Besiktas. It was Töre who had laid on the Hammers' first ever Premier League goal at the London Stadium a few days earlier, but his time in East London would be plagued by injury at the hands of a teammate and unconvincing form. The same went for another starter, former Arsenal midfielder Havard Nordtveit, who had given away a penalty on his debut in Slovenia and didn't show much improvement from there on out. The presence of the pair seems even more striking in the context of the West Ham team due to take on Frankfurt. Declan Rice will fill the Nordtveit role, having established himself as the most important member of Moyes' squad, while Töre's spot is filled by one of the club's bigger transfer success stories in the form of Jarrod Bowen. The rest of the midfield was closer to full strength, but full strength then and full strength now are very different things. Pedro Obiang and Chiku Kouyaté showed intermittent quality during their time with the club, but including the duo in a 3 with Nordtveit didn't scream goals. Across more than 250 games for West Ham, the 3 starting midfielders delivered 18 goals between them, with half of that total coming from Kouyaté in the 2 previous campaigns. In contrast, current central midfield pairing Rice and Tomas Soucek have 19 between them since the start of last season, more than 100 games fewer. Even the 2016 version of Antonio, while still useful, was not the player he is today. He certainly wasn't a striker by most people's definition, though some West Ham fans might say the same of actual starting striker Jonathan Calleri after his return of 1 goal in 19 appearances for the club. If you're sat there thinking the options from the bench must have been better, we've got some bad news for you. First up was Enner Valencia, a man who would be farmed out on loan to Everton within a week of the game and proceeded to score a whopping 3 goals. That's admittedly 2 more than Calleri, who made way for former Manchester United striker Ashley Fletcher. Fletcher had at least one thing in common with the man he replaced, namely that, you guessed it, he scored an entire 1 goal for the club. From 20 games, not 19, but it's close enough. In knockout football, desperate times can call for desperate measures, though throwing James Collins up front feels a bit extreme even in the most desperate of situations. At least these days West Ham have the option of, well, not an actual senior striker in reserve, but not a centre-back either. I told the guys before this was one of our most important games of the year because this was a final we needed to win, Bilic said after the defeat. The disappointment is massive. We didn't play well in the first half, or with desire as a team. We were second best. We created the sort of chances we had to score, but it wasn't that we missed chances, it was that we didn't play good. As West Ham prepare for another big European tie, they're not in perfect shape. As in 2016, they're missing key players, with Ogbonna and Issa Diop ruled out and Kurt Zouma unlikely to feature. Overall, though, they've shown under Moyes that they're not afraid of any European opponent, regardless of pedigree. They've already beaten former Europa League champions Sevilla and won in Lyon, so they can feel confident but still wary. Eintracht Frankfurt will be a big test, with the German side coming off a momentous win at Camp Nou, and Moyes won't be underestimating Oliver Glasner's team. However, win, lose or draw, there's already been a great deal of progress since West Ham's last European campaign.